coming down to one showdown, one showdown.
Hello poker players, I'm Steve Selbrady and I have a cash game hand for you. This is an online NL50 hand I played on the WSOP.com site in October of 2023. For your information, I use the Live Squeezer web application to create the hand history and Reroll Pro to display the hand. To begin the hand, the low jack folds and the hijack opens to 2.24 big blinds. After the cutoff folds, it's on me on the button with 9-7 suited and about 115 big blind effective stacks. What should I do here? I use the Holy Grail strategy to help me here. If you don't know what that is, you can view my Holy Grail videos or read my GTO cash game book. The villain's position index from the hijack is 40 points. The CPI of my 9-7 suited is 39 points, which is 18 plus 7 plus 8 points because it's suited and plus another 6 points because it's a one gapper. I would need a 46 point hand to 3-bet here, so my hand isn't nearly strong enough for that. But if I had an open opportunity, I would only need a 36 point hand, so I could easily have open. So this is normally a GTO fold, but I would still sometimes flat here. As I said, my Holy Grail baseline strategy is to fold here. So I expect a GTO analysis will say that I should fold, but let's check it to make sure. This is the GTO Wizard solution that is analogous to our hand. We have set up the model for a 6-max table and 100 big blind effective stacks, right there. The low jack folds, the hijack raises, the cutoff folds, and it is now on us on the button. This is a GTO Wizard button decision chart. Since we actually have 9-7 suited right there, we can see that this is a pure strategy fold. Calling is a negative 0.04 EV play, so folding is more profitable. But this recommendation is based on a table full of perfect GTO players. If my opponent is typical, he will make mistakes post-flop, and that may be something I can exploit. This might shift this negative EV call into a positive EV call. So I called, and the big blind also called. So I call, the small blind folds, and the big blind also calls. The flop comes 7-7-8 with 2 clubs. This is a great flop for me with trip 7s. The big blind checks, and the opener, the hijack, also checks, and now it's on me. What should I do here? I had 2 primary strategies in mind when I called the pre-flop raise. The first one is to take down the pot when I miss the flop and the villain checks. I might even float occasionally. The second strategy is to win a large pot when I happen to flop big, which I've done this time. But this is also a fairly wet board with flush draws and straight draws and lots of overcards. That means that there is a good chance that one of the villains has a piece of it and will call a reasonable bet. They might even think that I'm trying to steal the pot after both of them have showed weakness. So my normal inclination here is to bet. So I bet half pot, and both villains call. The turn is a jack, which completes a straight draw if one of the villains has exactly 9-10. And 9-10 suited is certainly a possibility here. Both villains check again, and it's on me. What should I do now? In this game, I usually would expect a turn straight to lead out, though this would not always be the case. Of course, I could also be behind pocket 8s and pocket jacks, but I doubt these hands would check twice. So I fully expect to be ahead here. But being ahead is not a good reason to bet. We should only bet if we expect to get called by more worse combos than by better ones. And we can still get called by draws and two-pair hands. So I'm normally going to bet again here. So I bet half pot again, which is my normal default bet size. This makes it more difficult for a villain to get a read on me. I've also found that although GTO models often prefer one bet size over another, the EV differences are usually quite small. And I'm not playing GTO perfect players either. So I size my bets depending on my poker landscape. In this case, I have no reason to deviate from my default bet size. So I bet, and both players call me again. This river completes another straight if one of the villains has 5-6. Now I could be behind two straights and several sets. The big blind checks again, and so does the hijack. Since both players check to me a second time, I doubt that they have these monster hands, so I'm probably ahead. But are there enough worse combos that could call another bet? Should I bet a third time here? Betting 3 times in a row is a very strong sequence, and good players might not call with many weaker hands. But their play suggests that I am not up against strong players. Also, a weak player might just conclude that I was the one with the draw and I missed it on the river. So I'm inclined to bet again. So I bet a third time. This time less than 1/3 of the pot. I bet smaller this time to make it easier for the weaker hands to make the call. If I bet too large, I might only get called by the rare monster played oddly. The big blind folds, and the original opener called with King 8 suited. He flopped top pair with a good kicker and just couldn't give it up. He didn't think I had a 7 and possibly convinced himself that I had been pushing a draw the whole time. So I win a 73 big blind pot. This is why I sometimes flat from the button with a speculative hand. Real games often have players that will pay me off when I flop well. So what are the lessons of today's hand? Even when game theory says a play has a negative expectation, it might actually be positive when we are in a soft game. We should not be a slave to game theory. So we can sometimes flat with a nearly neutral combo, especially when we are in the button in a soft game, even though flatting is contrary to our baseline strategy. When flopping a big hand in a multi-way pot, it's usually best to lead out, trying to build a big pot. Of course, sometimes everybody folds, which is a bummer, but playing the hand fast is usually the way to win the most money in the long run. Even when the board does not run out perfectly and it seems like we might be beaten, we should often bet the river for value, especially when there are inferior hands that can call us. Never underestimate the ability of a low-stakes player to call incorrectly. That's all, folks.